Welcome to Second Take. This is a special edition because Second Take is officially 1 year old. We are celebrating. This show actually takes two people to make, two people in total. Myself, Ashwyn, and Oscar. However, Oscar hates the cameras. He handles everything at the back of the cameras. So all I've asked is that Oscar just flash an image of himself and they just retract it. So Oscar. That was Oscar. All right, so the two of us have been doing this show and it's been an absolute pleasure. And we want to spend today being grateful to the people who have made this show happen, the dictators across Africa. We also go into perspective as I talk to some Namibian youth about the upcoming elections and if influencers can influence them to vote. My name is Ashwyn. Second Take is here to stay. So as we said, we are paying homage to the individuals that have brought us so much content and of course so much discontent to their own countries. We start off with South Sudan's Salva Kiir, who as recently as last week was being urged by the world to calm down, man. You can't keep postponing elections. We covered this story on Second Take. So, South Sudan's President Salva Kiir has sacked his police chief very randomly, and there are assertions that it is because he is trying to protect himself from a military coup. Now, Salva Kiir has been in power since 2011, so some might say he's a dictator, but I think he would prefer to call himself a long-term guardian. It's just smart branding. Now, this wasn't the first time he allegedly acted swiftly out of fear. He once got rid of 35 ministers in one swipe. You know, alleged dictators are very fascinating. If you know that people are plotting against you, your permanent plan surely can't be firing people each time you feel paranoid and just hoping to see another day. It has never worked and they keep doing it. So I am here to help. Presenting my new and exclusive handbook crafted for African dictators titled How to Know When It's Time to Let Go. I'll read the introduction and the first page if that's okay. I know how you feel. You thought it would last forever. We can't always get what we want. I know that it's hard to accept and therefore it's hard to perceive, but purchasing this book is the first step to your political self-awareness and possibly saving your life. Page 1. Do you find yourself constantly firing people because you have been feeling that they may be plotting against you? Now, this is a rare phenomenon, but most scientists have concluded that it's because you took over a country with the promise of freedom and democracy and instead created a kleptocracy while selfishly enriching yourself and oppressing the people that trusted you with power. The end. Now we swing over to our very first story. This was of Ali Bongo, who as recently as last week was officially announcing that he will not be taking part in politics in Gabon. This after a military coup. You know what I mean? It's like, were you ever going to be able to come back? But anyway, this is the story of Ali Bongo. With the recent events in Gabon, where a military coup thrust the Central African nation into turmoil, unseating the president just minutes after he was named the winner of a contested election. Ousted President Ali Bongo Ondimba, also known as Ali Bongo, has faced accusations of election fraud and corruption since he began ruling the oil-rich but poverty-stricken nation nearly 14 years ago. He took over from his father, Omar Bongo, who was the president for 42 years, 1967 to 2009. Now, Gabonese President Ali Bongo, speaking from apparent house arrest on Wednesday, asked the international community to make noise to support him and his family in a video shared widely online after military officers declared they had seized power. So naturally, I wondered why he was not appealing to his local support, fellow patriots and citizens alike. I mean, if you are democratically elected and you have the majority of votes, it's logical to appeal to your people to free you. So I thought I was wrong, because this was the reaction from the people of Gabon. Yep, residents in the capital of Libreville were seen dancing on the streets. In one video, people can be seen shouting "liberated" and waving the Gabonese flag in the Nteng district of the capital alongside military vehicles. Now I had to ask myself, what did he do to make the people celebrate his demise so emphatically? Well, the answer starts with his father, who I suppose was of the opinion that one simply can't rule for 42 years without affording themselves some benefits, given the sheer effort it takes to convince a nation that the presidency is actually a family business. Omar Bongo had 70 bank accounts, 39 apartments, 2 Ferraris, 6 Mercedes-Benz cars, 3 Porsches, and a Bugatti in France, because why not? So for his son, it only made sense that he followed family tradition, making sure Gabon's oil reserves enriched its rulers, many linked by family ties, and ignoring the frustration growing among the population over the inequality on display. 33.4% of Gabon's population lives in poverty in spite of being oil rich and only being 2.4 million people. But that didn't stop Ali Bongo from adding spice to what it means to be daddy's boy. For example, he once imported fake snow to the presidential palace so his family could have a snowy Christmas. Okay, so it's safe to say he left a sour taste in many people's mouths, people who would clearly prefer to have food on the table. But things didn't have to be this way. See, Ali Bongo could have changed his fate, not this year, but in the 70s when he was a funk musician going by the stage name Alain Bongo. That's right. He even released an album in 1977 titled A Brand New Man. And perhaps if his father had allowed the African boy to be an artist, Gabonese people wouldn't be asking for the same thing. I have to say, the scenes in Gabon were reminiscent of how things played out in Zimbabwe during the military coup that ousted Robert Mugabe in 2017. Do I love Uganda? Absolutely. Do I love Ugandans? Without a doubt. Do I love Yoweri Museveni? Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni is no stranger to second take. Some might say I pick on him unfairly. To those people I ask, what does it take to be unfair to an alleged dictator? I would need to be a dictator too, but as far as I'm concerned, Africa has gone far beyond its quota with regard to that. Ultimately, I can only work with what the people give me. For example, it's all about friendships. North Korea closed its embassy in Uganda in an effort to reduce its number of embassies in the region. This comes 2 weeks after Norway shut down its embassy in Uganda. If I'm Uganda, I'm looking at myself in the mirror wondering why people are starting to avoid me. Because North Korea and Norway couldn't have less in common. That's like your friend that likes listening to country music, leaving your house party right after your friend that listens to hip-hop leaves. It might mean that you just have a bad playlist. Now, might I suggest some Bobby wine for President Museveni to keep all his party guests happy and entertained? He's charismatic, talented, and he spends more time on your mind than the current terrorist insurgencies in your country. Plus, rumor has it, you like Bobby wine so much that you won't even let him go home alone from the airport. Now, if that doesn't say bestie, personally, I don't know what does. See, I even went out of my way to be a matchmaker for President Museveni. It is very difficult to make friends at his age, and here I am, trying to make sure that one of our elders is not lonely and I'm the bad guy. Look, I have a real reason to come to the president's aid. He is surrounded by some questionable characters. Have a look. Ugandan Minister Haruna Kasolo wants poor people to be punished for being poor. He actually said this. In the future, the government could pass a law through the parliament whereby all the lazy, poor people would be given strokes so that they can also learn to work and become rich. You know, Museveni's musketeers never cease to amaze me. Sir, if beating created wealth, then there would be more African millionaires than male rap artists. What I believe is lazy is failing to create and deliver on people-centered policies and grassroots education on finance. What I find lazy is wishing to harm poor people in an economy that you preside over simply because you do not know how to create a healthy society, which may be largely due to an inability to commit to any form of self-awareness that would allow you to see your own humanity in truth, and therefore seeing and honoring the humanity of the very people that put you in power, your people. How are you the State Minister for Finance, Planning and Economic Development when all the knowledge you have garnered has left you with the reasoning of a drunk circus animal trainer? Okay, let me be constructive. Honorable Minister, it will do you good to realize the very real possibility of Ugandans ditching those that are seemingly drunk on power for some bottles of Bobby wine. I'll suggest you give it some thought. Anyway, that's old news. This is a new year and everyone deserves a second chance. So what has President Yoweri Museveni been up to recently? While Uganda's president appointed his son as army commander, sparking nepotism concerns. First of all, when his son was climbing up army ranks, that may have sparked nepotism concerns. Appointing him general is a nepotism fire that would burn your braai vlees if you placed it 5 meters away from the flame. Not to mention that this move follows a cabinet reshuffle dismissing 5 ministers. And naturally, he denies grooming his son for succession, but that's like Prince William being told that he keeps losing his hairline in order to remain a duke. Maybe I'm being harsh. Maybe national positions and resources should be treated like a family business. After all, the children always turn out great, right, Dos Santos? One of our other proud sponsors of the show is Cameroon's Paul Biya, with a special mention to his age mate, Joe Biden. 40 years ago, Every Step You Take by the Police was topping the charts, with Billie Jean by Michael Jackson right behind it. 40 years ago, Motorola was circulating the very first mobile phone, and Super Mario was 2 years from being created. Fast forward to today, Taylor Swift and Doja Cat are topping the charts. Cell phones are literally the center of our lives, and grown men can make a living from playing video games. Now, in all that time, Cameroon has had one president, Paul Biya, who is celebrating 40 years in power. He is 90 years old, and many voices within the ruling Democratic Rally of the Cameroonian people have already called for him to vie in the 2025 presidential election for an 8th 7-year term. Listen, my grandfather is not 90. He's relatively healthy, but I'm not asking him to lead even my youth group without prioritizing his rest and perhaps his rather conservative heart. Who asks anyone over the age of 80 to take up another shift leading an entire country? Well, the Ivory Coast, Equatorial Guinea, Zimbabwe, obviously. Museveni gets an honorable mention because he just looks the part, and the last addition to the Old Boys Club is none other than Joe Biden. Now, all the presidents mentioned would have had their lunch taken by Paul Biya because even they are youngsters to him. And the thing about elderly folks is you can't make them do anything, even for themselves. Because last year, thousands gathered in the capital Yaoundé to celebrate the president, and he did not attend. The man was too tired to celebrate. How much energy do you feel he has for the pertinent issues constantly stemming from Cameroon? At some point, we need to feel sorry for these leaders, so I am starting a movement. Hashtag Let Grandpa Rest, a Robert Mugabe-inspired movement that seeks to protect elderly Africans from working 30 years past their retirement age. Believe it or not, Grandpa Biya, it's for your own good. Trust me on this one. American leadership is what holds the world together, said Biden. And I couldn't figure out if that was Father Time making another dramatic feature or if he actually believed what he was saying. Either way, much like the Biden administration's recent decision to build 20 miles of wall at the Mexican border, the irony was not lost on me. Mr. Biden said America held the world together. So in the spirit of togetherness of mind and logic, I should let you know that the CIA has confirmed a total of 7 countries that the US has overthrown, beginning with Iran in 1953, Guatemala 1954, that's back to back, followed by Congo in 1960, Dominican Republic in 1961, another double shot of Americano Democracia, which must have resulted in a regime change hangover because the country took a 2-year break. And then the USA picked up where they left off with South Vietnam, Brazil, and Chile. And for some more perspective, it has invaded 84 out of 194 countries recognized by United Nations. Yet somehow, having nose and gun barrel in other countries' business, especially when the business of oil is involved, is considered holding the world together. That said, everyone simply acts on what they know. And considering the glaring political, racial, and economic divisions in the USA, and the fact that former President Donald Trump stands accused of inciting an attempted coup in January 2021, it's safe to say that the lack of charity begins at home. Yes, home, where most men the same age as Joe Biden spend their time. coming in swinging with the kind of geopolitical prowess that can have us all re-evaluating world maps. US President Joe Biden showcased his unparalleled ability to traverse the labyrinth of international relations. Fresh off the heels of concerns regarding his cognitive fitness, President Biden, in a dazzling linguistic acrobatics routine, managed to make Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi the head of Mexico, at least in his head. Have a look.
As you know, initially, the president of Mexico, el-Sisi, did not want to open up the gate to allow humanitarian material to get in. I talked to him. I convinced him to open the gate. My memory is not good. My memory is fine. My memory, take a look at what I've done since I become president. None of you thought I could pass any of the things I got passed. How'd that happen? You know, I guess I just forgot what was going on.
Mr. President.
Oh, and here's an honorable mention.
And now I want to hand it over to the president of Ukraine, who has as much courage as he has determination. Ladies and gentlemen, President Putin. President Putin. We're going to beat President Putin. President Zelensky. I'm so focused on beating Putin, we got to worry about it. Anyway, Mr. President.
I'm better.
You are a hell of a lot better.
Now we swing over to my favorite from Zambia, Edgar Lungu, and his favorite, a man whose name I am unashamed to say, Emmerson Mnangagwa. Zambia's political landscape precariously hangs on the edge of turmoil, this with the recent return of former President Edgar Lungu to the political arena, a move that follows his defeat in the last presidential election. Now, Lungu's recent controversial comment that Zambians may rise against the current administration has sent shockwaves throughout the nation, hinting at potential civilian unrest. So, the man who once led the nation through what many describe as the most brutal regime, particularly because of the cadres he unleashed on civilians, is now at the forefront of alleging police brutality, a claim vehemently refuted by former Vice President Nevers Mumba. Mumba boldly asserts that Lungu, of all people, lacks the credibility to decry alleged police misconduct, considering his past record. You know, Lungu complaining about police brutality is essentially like Jacob Zuma complaining about state capture. You know, many accuse Lungu of being drunk on power, sometimes literally. But I would like to submit that hypocrisy needs no alcoholic courage. It comes naturally to politicians. Lungu's return to the political scene is much like the absent father that left and came back only to find that the locks have been changed. And so he is screaming from the gate, hoping that someone misses him enough to open up for him. But alas, Zambia seems to have moved on from him, because contrary to popular belief, you can't cure a political hangover with a double shot of delusion. Zimbabwe President Emmerson Mnangagwa has tried to allay widespread fears that he wants to extend his presidency beyond the constitutionally permissible two-term limit and stay in power beyond 2028. In recent months, there have been growing sentiments that Mnangagwa, who ascended to power through a 2017 coup, wanted to amend the country's constitution to remove the term limit. Alternatively, he could seek consent from Parliament to de-harmonize elections and defer presidential ones to 2030. Contrary to public perception, the 81-year-old ZANU-PF leader hinted he will retire in 2028 upon the expiry of his second and final 5-year presidential term. But let's talk about this public perception, because that matters. It matters when your people are afraid that you could violate or change the constitution, especially when you consider yourself democratically elected. It says that the people do not trust their leader. It says that the people are aware that the reason you had a military coup to bring you into power was because Mugabe was not going to hand over the reins, and not because you felt that a man that had ruled for 38 years with you by his side was too old, a man that managed to consolidate power using your might. It is one thing to seek to allay fears. It is another to use it as an opportunity to review your political legacy. Because if you are a father and your children ask you if you will come home in a drunk state hurling insults at them again, it's not enough to say that you won't do it tonight. It's an opportunity to review the nature of your impact on your family. If it is true that Mnangagwa will let go of the reins, it may very well be the first time he can consider himself a better leader than Mugabe. Sometimes leaving is the best way for you to lead your nation, for your nation to move forward. And should that happen, as the Constitution requires, many Zimbabweans that have been disenfranchised by their own home can muster up the energy to proudly, finally, call you their president. And we are swinging over into Namspective. In real time, I spoke to Mariwood and Edwina about their opinions on influencers trying to influence youth to vote in Namibia. Keeping in mind, Namibia is going to elections in November, and this election is going to have the youth as the majority of voters, which to some old institutions could be a threat, but to people who meant what they said when they say the children are the future, I think for them this should be a relief. Either way, I spoke to Mariud and Edwina about their opinion on influencers influencing the youth to vote. I am here talking to Edwina, and I want to find out her opinion with regards to influencers. We're seeing them popping out in political colors more often than usual. Of course, it's an election year here in Namibia, particularly in this context. So I wanted to talk to a Namibian youth and just ask, do influencers, move the needle with regards to making you want to vote?
I personally wouldn't say they move the needle for me, but I do recognize that there are a lot of young people in Namibia that are quite motivated by that. Yes.
So do you think they're important?
I would say they're important if the motivation behind why they are taking part in this is correct. So I would say they're important, yes.
But I mean, of course, correct is going to be subjective.
Yes.
Many different political parties, they're each going to stand for a thing. But I guess if we're looking at the baseline, if we're saying, okay, we want Namibian youth to vote, you say this is a viable way to do it.
Because it does bridge the gap a little bit, yeah.
How do you feel when those influencers outside of election season don't necessarily reflect what they campaign for?
It's really disheartening because it shows a lack of reliability, not only in their own campaign with who they are, their brand, but also towards the young people who are actually going because these people said they are representing or they stood for something but could not follow through with it. It's really disappointing and it's really disheartening, and I feel like it causes that a lot of the young people won't even want to do it again or vote again if that is the case. Yeah.
Well, okay, let me play the devil's advocate.
Okay.
Please don't translate that sentence to my grandparents. But let me play the devil's advocate here. Some of the artists, it's a gig. You know what I mean? A political party comes through. I don't necessarily have cash flow. It's a gig. Yes, I put on their colors. You decide whether you're going to vote or not. How do you feel about artists who then, they may campaign for a political party, but really they're just trying to put food in their mouths? Would you rather they go, you know what, it's okay, I have my values, or should they get something to eat?
I think that is entirely subjective to the person and their values and their core principles, because it's, for me, it's the same more or less selling alcohol. If you want to do it, great, but recognizing how it affects the other people who are recipients of this information, of this campaign, of this information you're putting out. I think
it's a responsibility. With great power comes great responsibility,
really
and I can get that. Okay, so is there an influencer that would make you want to vote?
Please be specific. A Namibian influencer?
Namibian context.
No. I'm so sorry.
Wow. So Namibian influencers, you've heard it. You might get her to click, you might get her to comment, but you can't get her to vote. All right. You first asked me in Namibia, which means outside Namibia, there might be someone who could get you. Who could get you to
maybe.
Vote? Maybe who?
It's not even in Africa, though. To be
not even in
honest.
Africa. What?
Yeah,
what?
No.
Where
because
are we
it has to come with
what
ammunition.
Now? And there's no ammunition. Whoa! Ammunition is something we generally don't want around elections.
No.
As Africans, we want to try and avoid ammunition. Okay.
Honestly, it would have to be someone that I was maybe very inspired by.
Yeah.
but I would rather not mention.
You'd rather not mention.
Yeah.
All right. But I guess we can both understand that
Yeah.
there are Namibians who are going to feel the same way you feel about the icon that you like. And, that will be enough to get them to vote. But then it's up to you, the artist. Are you saying what you mean, or are you just trying to get fed? If you're just trying to get fed, how much weight does what you say carry? All right, joining me now is youthful journalist Marihood, who's supposed to be youth, but he dares to be taller than me. So you know what these youngsters do sometimes, very unnecessary in their approach. Marihood, how's it going, brother?
Oh, good, man. How was it?
I'm fantastic. All right. So the question I'm asking is, are influencers important heading towards an election?
Well, I wouldn't say they are important, but as we know, or politics as we know it nowadays, parties are allowed to use whatever means within their disposal to campaign. And I would say that's just a way of them campaigning.
Yeah, no, for
It's-
sure.
it's
And
not
I
illegal.
can see right now you've got your journalism hat strongly on. But I want your Namibian youth hat, the one who scrolls TikTok like the rest of us. When you're scrolling TikTok and you see an influencer campaigning for a political party, is that something that would grab your attention?
Well, I'm not a TikToker, but yeah, it would grab my attention, yeah.
And you feel like that's important for a lot of political parties to embrace as a campaign strategy?
Well, if you put it that way, then yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, that's how people get to know about elections and come and vote and whatnot. Yeah.
How important is it to you that the influencers reflect what they're campaigning for? Are you okay with just going to a concert and you just enjoy the music and the party colors? Or are you also going to be on Twitter and say, listen, man, we're talking unemployment. Why aren't you saying anything?
Right. No, I would say I would go there and just enjoy the music and not literally.
No expectations.
Yeah, no expectations, whatever. Because I mean, we have heard these things like for quite some time now, and we know they are all a facade. The political parties put up.
All right. So for you, it's strictly advertising.
Yeah,
They're not
absolutely.
swaying.
I mean, they even pay them, so
They
yeah.
pay them, and that's the other thing. If you're doing something and you're just trying to get to the next day, it's hard to stash your values next to that. So, is there any influencer that might get you to want to vote? Let's not say influencer. Let's say influential figure, public figure, celebrity. You're allowed to say Ashwyn Berry. I'm joking, but really, I mean that. Is there any influencer or any public figure that if you saw them seriously trying to dissect political issues, that you might be like, you know what, I've been listening to you or paying attention to you in this realm, but now I might want to see what you mean when it comes to politics?
I would say there's a difference between an influencer and a political analyst. A political analyst, I would listen, but an influencer, that's just like someone out there trying to get fed in a way. So I am skeptical about it.
Clearly, you're very, because you are not swaying from this position at all. You have decided that they are strictly advertising. I won't push you any further. I understand. That's what makes you an honorable journalist, my friend. That's what makes you an honorable journalist. So that's Mariud giving his take on influencers and influencing votes. Thank you for staying with Second Take, not just tonight, but throughout the year. It has truly been an amazing experience getting an opportunity to do what we love to do, which is making fun of the powerful. Yes, that's how it works. For everything you have that I don't have, I get to say, my name is Ashwyn Berry. This has been Second Take.